previous video, I talked about the new Honda CRF150L. We talked about its pros and cons and my recommendations if you are in the market for a modern dual sport that won't break the bank. In this episode, we'll be talking about a discontinued but still popular up to this day, the Honda XLR200. Please take note, I live in the Philippines and this model might not be in your country. My experience and knowledge about this bike might differ from yours, but if you happen to have ridden one or have something similar, feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below. Oh yeah, like and subscribe and help me grow my channel. This bike had a really long production run from 1993 all the way to 2012. It was replaced by the then new CRF250L, but just like the legendary but also discontinued XRs of the 80s to the early 2000s, the XLR is still a popular choice despite its ancient design. Just like the CRF-L, the XLR200 is classified as a dual sport. It is powered by a carburetor-fed 200cc air-cooled 4-stroke 2-valve single-cylinder engine that produces 19 horsepower and 17 Nm of torque. Managing that power to the rear wheel is a 5-speed manual transmission. Chassis is also a semi-double cradle steel frame. Suspension for the front is a 37mm standard fork with 8 inches of travel. For the back, you get a single shock with 7.5 inches of travel. Slowing this bike down is a basic 2-piston caliper front disc brake system, and the rear is a drum brake hub. Wheels are standard enduro sizes of 21-inch rims for the front and 18s at the back. Fuel capacity is at 9 liters plus half a liter for reserve. Wet weight is at 123 kilograms and the seat height is at 35 inches off the ground. For rider size guide, these two guys will be our examples. So what are the pros and cons based on what we see and know? And also, why is it still an awesome motorcycle up to this day? At least here where I live. Just like the last video, I will start with the negatives because that is what everybody wants to know first. Alright, comparing this engine to the ones found in the 80s model XL and XR200s, this one is slow. The previous models produced 22 horsepower in stock trim and had a snappier throttle feel, while this one feels like it hasn't had breakfast yet. The older engines also had a 6-speed transmission, while this one only has 5, which is odd considering this is a newer model at that time. At higher speeds, the XLR feels underpowered and undergeared. As is stock, the XLR probably has the crappiest ergonomics in my opinion. The stock bars are really low, and to make things worse, the forks are short for its size, further emphasizing the lean forward position, which makes the bike weight distribution forward biased. But probably the worst thing about this bike is the weight. At 123 kilograms with fuel, this bike is not only heavy for a 200cc, it also has a high center of gravity, making the bike feel very awkward to ride even at city speeds. Off-road situations are where these flaws can be felt the most. Top-heavy design, forward biased weight, further emphasizing the lack of rear-wheel traction in off-road situations, and the stock carburetor is slow and choppy in delivering the power. And a major flaw that this bike has is the lack of a kickstarter. In my opinion, a kickstarter is a must-have in any enduro. Now, if we base this bike on its flaws alone, then you will be missing a lot on why the XLR is still popular up to this day. And the reasons are many. For the sake of keeping this video short, I will focus on 3 key reasons why it's still a good choice despite it being discontinued for quite some time. First reason has to do with the overall design of this bike. If you are a Honda XR fanboy like me, for sure you will see a 1987 to 95 XR250 at first glance. From the headlight, fenders, gas tank, there is no denying this bike is clearly a copy of that model. And if you look closely, the frame and the 200cc engine looks a lot like the XR or XL200s from the same era. You could also say it looks a lot like the CRF230F Enduro from the 2000s up to now. Speaking of similar design from the XR and XLs from the 80s, reason number 2 is the fact that the XLR200 has a lot of similar components that can be replaced with parts from those bikes. This bike has been around quite some time, and a lot of people here have done some experiments with their bikes. Plastics can be interchanged to that of the older models. The stock front fork, steel swing arm, and simple rear shock can be swapped easily for a better set. The 200cc engine also accepts parts from the older models, and can also be upgraded with parts from other non-Honda models. In short, there is an abundance of parts to keep this bike up and running. Third, and probably the main reason why this bike is still relevant today, is the fact that there are so many of these in the pre-owned market. If you happen to live in this part of the world and go on Facebook Marketplace, I guarantee you there will be at least 5 examples of used XLR200s within a 5-kilometer radius. Prices vary depending on condition, but there are some well-maintained units that can go for as low as 30,000 pesos. Alright, to sum things up, the XLR200 in stock form is a flawed enduro bike. But with the cheap prices on a used unit that has abundance of spares, multiple upgrade options, decades of knowledge, and the classic styling of its bigger XR250 or XL siblings, you got yourself an off-road machine that is easy to maintain and fun to ride and modify at the same time. And if this video is not the bike that you're looking for, check out my other videos right here.